Okay, all right. I think we're ready to start. Thank you so much for being part of our panel today. We really appreciate it. Hope everyone has been having a wonderful day. We have an amazing group of panelists today that I'm very excited about, and I just want to point out that this is the only panel in the entire conference that has a geographic focus, which is, I think, fascinating and says a lot about the interesting things we can talk about Latin America. So really quickly, I'm going to start by introducing our panelists, and then we're going to get into talking about the ecosystem, the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America. So to start all the way to the left, we have Marcos Allende Lopez, who is the technical coordinator at LACChain, which is a global alliance meant to promote the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America. He is also the lead researcher at the IT Tech Lab of the Inter-American Development Bank. Next, we have Mauricio Tovar, who is the co-director of the INTI Colombia Research Group at the National University of Colombia, and he is doing some absolutely amazing work leading blockchain projects at ViveLab Bogota, which is a digital innovation lab under the National University of Colombia, and they're doing some amazing work focusing on land registries and voting and academic certifications. And then finally, to my left here, we have Cecilia Chapiro, who's the investment advisor at the UNICEF Innovation Fund in developing and emerging countries. She also manages their blockchain portfolio of investments, which I believe has investments in several companies, startups in Latin America. And then finally, my name is Silvana Rodriguez. I work at ConsenSys. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Americas. My background also includes 13 years at the U.S. State Department as a diplomat, so have a bit of that background as well. So before we get started with our questions, I'd just like to ask for a show of hands. How many of you are currently working on or involved with blockchain-based projects in Latin America? Oh, wow, that's actually more than half of the room. That's really impressive. So this, I think, will be particularly relevant to the things that you're working on. So to get started, let's talk a little bit about the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America. The region has, unfortunately, a lot of people are used to a situation where maybe there's a history of, for political reasons or economic reasons, things possibly not working as well as you would like. You also have perhaps 70% of underbanked or unbanked people. At the same time, you have incredibly creative and strong entrepreneurs. You have booming businesses and banks. You have consortia that are working in different countries on building the ecosystem for this. You have solutions that are working very closely with government and being supported by government. And then you have solutions that are being developed perhaps in places where government isn't going to work as well. So with that really amazing, powerful mixed bag, I would love to hear a little bit from each of you about the work you're doing and how that contributes to this ecosystem, this blockchain ecosystem in Latin America. So maybe we could start with the ladies.
Thank you so much. So again, by raise of hands, who is 100% sure that blockchain can solve some of the problems in the social sector? Okay, maybe we have like 20% of the room. So in my team at UNICEF Innovation, we're actually not sure, but we think that there is enough evidence out there to explore what's the potential of this evidence that we find. So to basically explore what could come around with blockchain technologies, what we do is we have what we call the Innovation Fund, the UNICEF Innovation Fund, that we use to give small investments to early stage startups in developing and emerging countries. So what we do is we fund companies that are building open source technologies. So it's not only that they're building with frontier technologies like blockchain, but they're also building it in the open. With the premise that what we believe is that if that exploration that early stage company is doing is successful, we can as quickly as possible expand that solution in other countries. So that's what we do. We provide up to $100,000 to these startups. And more than that, we also support them with technical support, business support, different connections throughout our networks. So we basically use a lot of our positioning in the UN to help them validate their solutions and scale. So I'm going to stop for now.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Silvana, for inviting me. It's an honor to share this panel with Cecilia and Marcos, and with you also. In the National University, we have been working in blockchain technology for the last 3 years. And what we want to achieve is to put more transparency, trust, and security in public sector. In the public sector, we work a lot with the public sector. My university is a public university. And for example, we did a project with the ICT Ministry and the National Land Agency to use blockchain in a specific area that is the restitution process in the peace process of Colombia. To give some context, Colombia had been or was in an internal conflict or an internal war for 60 years. And 3 years ago, we signed the government signed a peace agreement with the guerrilla. And as a result of that violence for 60 years, a lot of people lost their relatives, but also they lost their land. So there is a process to compensate these victims with land. And in that process, we use Ethereum and IPFS to do two things mainly. The first one is to decentralize the documents of the land, of the owner, and of the legal process, and through the smart contract to connect these documents and to secure them. And the second is that the public employee that is doing changes in the process have to do face recognition, and the hash of that face recognition go to blockchain and have to match every time he wants to do a change. So if he wants to do a bad thing, he can do it, but he have in the blockchain the user, the password, and the hash of the face recognition. So we are going to find it in a moment. We also did a project with the municipality of Bogota in voting process. 3 public schools in Bogota selected their leader students using blockchain. We also did academic certification project with the National University of Colombia. And we also developed a blockchain toolkit with the ICT Ministry of Colombia. If you want to see any of the demos or the videos of how it works, I can show you after the panel.
Hi, hello everyone. I also want to start by thanking you for having me here, Silvana. So I think I'm contributing to the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2 different ways that are very aligned. And I'm representing here the first one, that is LACChain. LACChain is a global alliance to develop the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America and the Caribbean. So in this global alliance, we have ConsenSys, we have Everest, we have entity data, we have LACChain, we have IO builders, we have legal blogs, we have the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, we also have Blockchain Research Institute. We have a lot of different institutions that are working together to develop at the same time technological infrastructure, but also standards and regulatory frameworks in order to have the entire pack to enable the development also of solutions that are scalable and that can be replicated across the entire Latin America and the Caribbean. So I would like to introduce a concept, because I'm going to be referring in my interventions to these concepts that are this. So according to the International Standards Organization, the ISO, today there are 2 classifications of blockchains. So we have the permissioned blockchains and the permissionless blockchains. Okay? Then within the permissioned blockchains, we have private and public. And this is very important because we've been hearing for years about the private versus public. But there's something new today, because the traditional public blockchains are today called permissionless. But within the permission ones, we have a new generation of blockchains that are also public. And this is very important, because this means that we can have networks that are as decentralized, as open, as transparent as the ones that we have today with Bitcoin or Ethereum, but that can also leverage things from the permission networks as privacy, as identity, as regulation, and as all of these things that some governments and some private institutions are demanding in order to build their applications. So from LACChain, we are right now betting on these kind of networks. We already have a testnet open to everyone in Latin America and the Caribbean that wants to put a solution on top of it, and we are working on these standards and new testnets to release them for everyone.
Thank you very much. And actually, my company, ConsenSys, is very excited to support the LACChain effort through our UPort identity solution and also the Pantheon protocol layer. Hopefully, we'll be putting out more information at some point soon, but it's a really exciting project. So here you've heard that we have some different sectors represented. We have intergovernmental organizations that are working directly with the startup community. We have academia and government working closely in hand with other partners and other sectors for government services. And then you have this international financial institution that's really taking a leading role in a regional type of infrastructure. So now I want to get back to you guys to say, what do you think it is about that's unique about Latin America? And what is actually working today?
Okay, I'll go first then as well. So as you said at the beginning, I think there's some key components of Latin America that could demand, or that actually demand this kind of technology. And I'm going to speak specifically about two. So we have, and I say that with like a lot of love because I am a Latin person and I lived there most of my life. But we have a lack of transparency, and we have a deep belief in the government and government expenditure. That's like one big part of our culture and beliefs. And then on the second side, we have, of course, like a lack of economic stability, to say something. And these two things are key components of how the blockchain community expanded so rapidly and is increasing in size in the region. So I can say, for example, in the transparency part, as within UNICEF, what we've done is we just invested in one startup. The name is OS City. So they're basically working both in Mexico and in Argentina. And what they're doing is they're building a blockchain platform that allows citizens to view the public expenditure to different infrastructure solutions that the government is implementing, especially in the south of Argentina. So what's important about this startup is that they're also working on this together with the government, which I think also could be sometimes either limiting or benefiting a solution, but in this case, it's definitely benefiting it. They're doing it together. And now the citizens of one city called Bahía Blanca, they're basically able to go online and see what is happening with the public money. So that again would help tremendously because it is a region known by their high levels of corruption. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And then on the second note, lack of economic stability. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on that because we all know the situation in many countries that are going through huge inflation levels like Venezuela and Argentina. But the rise of stable coins is sometimes a solution that citizens definitely appreciate.
Yeah. So I was talking before about my role as the technology coordinator at LACChain, but the second way I'm contributing to the ecosystem in Latin America is by being the technical advisor in 13 projects at the Inter-American Development Bank. So from those projects, actually, we learned there are a lot of opportunities in Latin America and the Caribbean to use the technology, and this is why the Innovation Lab of the IDB is leading this LACChain program. And I would like to highlight two very important facts about Latin America and the Caribbean. The first one is that there's a lot of interest both from the private sector and the public sector in doing things related to innovation and things related to technology. So they are willing to take the risk to really incorporate emerging technology to their solutions because they have nothing to lose. So they are, spending the money and they are open to really incorporate blockchain among other, emerging technologies to do things that are great and that are disruptive. And the second thing about Latin America is that compared, for example, to Europe, there's not very strong regulation regarding emerging technologies. And this can be seen as something good or something bad. But the good part about it is that there are a lot of things that are illegal. That means that are neither illegal or legal because they are simply not regulated. So we can leverage that in order to do things quick and fast, and bring new products in 3, 4, 5 months that we don't need to ask for permission to do it. And I think this is something very interesting compared to Europe, where you need to spend a lot of time talking to lawyers and regulators in order to do something useful.
In February, I was in Singapore talking with some companies, and they asked me why I have to go to Latin America. Because you make a hold in Singapore and you go to Ecuador. It's in the other part of the world. And I answer, because we have a lot of problems to solve. And that's a very huge opportunity. In some parts of the world, the financial system have good services. In Latin America, you mentioned that Argentina and Venezuela have the problems with the national currency and also cannot go to other currencies. So Bitcoin is a good store of value for them. But also, in the case of Colombia, the financial sector is very well protected by the regulation. So the people is trying to find options, like in Venezuela and Argentina, trying to find options in Bitcoin. In Colombia, the people is trying to find options not only in crypto, but also in fintech technology, different blockchain, and things like that. But it's not the only sector that have that problem. We have a lot of problems that blockchain can help to have different services and alternative services. And I think that's an opportunity. Fortunately, there are institutions like LACChain and also the Blockchain Ibero-America Alliance that are working on strengthening the use of the technology in the region. And I think that we have, and for the investor, it's a very huge opportunity. And for the future, I think that we have a very good future in Latin America using blockchain.
I just want to add something related to what he was saying. So the way we work at UNICEF is exactly like that. We start with the problem, and that was just a very good way to put it. So there are some other things that we are looking at and see what can we do to do a very small prototype, a small exploration to see what could blockchain create from it. And like another example is voting. So basically elections. Elections are known in this region to be highly corrupt. In Argentina, where I'm from, there's dead people voting. And that's, I know that could be amusing to people from the developed world, but that is incredibly common. So there's every time there's more votes than actually people able to vote. And there's still nothing that they can do or that hasn't been done yet to explore it. So I'm not sure if blockchain could do something about it. I know there will be a lot of bugs in the process and a lot of different things, but it for sure opens up the creativity of options and the possibility of things that we could do to try to solve some of the problems that haven't been able to be solved yet.
No, those are all wonderful points. So at this point, we've talked a little bit about what the potential is, what some of the areas that are working are. And now when we think about sort of the last few years and what's brought us to this moment, there have been thousands of blockchain-based impact types of projects that have started, not that many that have scaled. So looking towards the future, because we don't need to go backwards, looking towards the future, what's missing? What challenges do we need to tackle to be able to really address that impact space? What's missing and what's next?
For me, the key factor is the knowledge. And we have a lack of human talent in Latin America, not only in developers, but also in lawyers and UX design. For me, UX and design is very important. But we also have a very low rate of R&D's investment, and without research, it's very difficult to access to new knowledge. So it's very difficult to have these new developments and knowledge. I think for the public, general public, the UX is very important. We have to do very easy to use this technology. Otherwise, it's just for geeks, just for who knows the technology and can do the things that we can do today. For the future in our work, we are starting a project with the Procuraduría. I don't know how to say that in English.
Oh my gosh, I know this is not prosecutor general, but it's the
Okay, the institution.
The attorney general.
Okay. And with the Fourth Industrial Revolution Center of San Francisco for the procurement process in Colombia. We're going to do a pilot on that. We are very excited about it.
Yes. So the other day I was reading an article that was saying, let's stop doing minimum valuable products and let's start building minimum valuable ecosystem. And that's very true, because what are we doing today? We are building thousands of applications on top of thousands of new networks, new blockchain networks. So how do we want to scale solutions when we have a blockchain for each solution? We need to start adopting universal blockchains that at the same time have low transaction fees, have identity in order to identify the end users you want to, provide a solution to. So we need to start having the right technology. But the right technology is not only, you cannot only aim at having a minimum valuable product with a technology. You need more things to have a minimum valuable ecosystem. So what are these things? To me, these things are regulation, governance, and standards. So we need those three things together with the technology in order to have something we can scale. So in terms of the technology, I think that there are already, useful blockchain in the market, but I think that in order to achieve social impact, these public permission networks that I was talking to you before about, I think these are the ones that have more potential to bring to the table short-term scalable solutions, because they have the best of the permissionless networks and the private permission networks. So then regarding the regulation, as I was saying, I think there's not only a roadblock, but there's an opportunity in Latin America and the Caribbean, because we don't have a lot of regulation that is preventing us from developing solutions. Now, in terms of standards, there are a lot of great proposals from the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance and also from the World Wide Web Consortium in terms of digital identity, verifiable claims, decentralized key management systems that a lot of people is using. Actually, we are leveraging that for LACChain. And I think that's going to make easier to really build solutions, because right now, for example, if you use even the same enterprise software, Quorum, for developing an application, different solutions within the same software, they have different consensus protocols, so they cannot interoperate. So it's the same for, you look at any different technical component and they are using different things. So if we have standards, that's going to be much more useful. And finally, the governance. I think that in the permission private networks today, there's a huge problem with the governance, because if we have 4 institutions sharing a blockchain solution, who is responsible for giving access to a new institution or for doing an upgrade? So that's not happening in the permission networks today. That's something that the permissionless public networks do very well, and that's something that we need to also adopt in these new blockchain networks, right?
I'd love to read that article. I would argue that, well, I'm a big advocate of the MVP, of the minimal viable product, so I'd love to read it. I do think, however, and I agree that we do need this ecosystem, and I agree that having multiple players working together would definitely bring much better results or faster. Maybe I would say not at the expense of not doing the MVPs anymore. But I agree with the second part. And as I was saying before, one of the examples of one of our startups working together with the government was a really great success case study for us in the fund. And then before this panel, I was talking with Mauricio, and he was telling me about one of his projects where they're using also a blockchain platform to register land, how do you say, like ownership. To register land ownership, but they're doing it together with the government. Yeah, they're doing it together with the government. And we were evaluating at the fund one example doing the same thing, but without the collaboration with the government in Africa. And we actually decided not to invest in that startup, because our main argument was, if like, how can you validate that someone will come up and say, this is my piece of land because I have a paper, but then you go into this whole process of how can you certify that that paper is true and it's valid. But they were doing it together with the legal system in the reclassification of land, and that was kind of preventing the flaw that we saw in the other project. So definitely working together with different players in an ecosystem, I think would definitely provide other kinds of results. I would also say that one of the things that appealed to me, to the blockchain world, was the lack of social metrics that you see in the lack of success metrics that you see in the social sector. So when you compare the social sector and the private sector, of course the private sector is so much more objective. You can see if a company is doing well or is doing bad, if a company is left out of the market or not. But in the social sector, that's not how it works. There's not that tight accountability, and a lot of the metrics are hidden over social metrics that it's sometimes hard to look like aside from. So I think if we do want to like analyze where this sector is going, I think everyone that is working in this sector and is building a blockchain solution should have some level of accountability and help create a system where we can better measure impact and we can better assess how startups compare or how solutions compare to one another. So there's that. And I think even though there are so many solutions today, there's very few success examples. And I think whenever a new industry emerges, you need that one success. So when shared economies started with Uber, everyone knew it could happen in other areas like food and cleaning and like so many different areas because Uber made it happen. So you knew that it was possible. And I think with blockchain, we still haven't seen that yet. Maybe the ecosystem would help.
Yeah. Do you have, before I turn to the audience, do you have a guess at what that first success, what sort of field, sector, example, use case that first success might look like? Anybody?
Well, I think digital identity is something totally necessary for enabling use cases and also for measuring the impact. Because if you want to provide digital services to people, you need to have these people, digitally identified. So not only I think this is something that is coming soon, but I think it's something that is completely necessary. And I think digital identity is something we are going to be seeing very soon.
Any others before I turn to the audience?
I agree, because for voting process you need digital identity. Also for the commercial land registry process you need digital identity, and for different services is very important. So you allow a lot of services using if you have that solution solved.
I would add both. I would add the access to financial services, especially in Latin America. It's like a small percentage of people, of the population, that have access to finance and credits, and there's many examples that are working towards giving better access.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to turn to the audience. We have about 3 minutes left. If I could, what I think we're going to do is just take all of the questions, and then as you can, answer the ones that speak to you. Please.
So what's your comment on the stablecoin, that whether stablecoin in Latin America can change, the landscape of financing and benefit the depreciation of the currencies?
Okay. Next question.
What is the role of the private companies in the developed world that they can contribute to solving these problems in Latin America?
Well, first of all, congratulations, to the three of you, especially Mauricio, because you're the visible head right now in Colombia that is doing this wonderful job. So my question is very simple. We're talking about permissionless or permissioned blockchains. We're talking about open or DLT. And the question is, how do you actually keep the incentives, the structure of incentives? Because if we're talking about blockchain, you cannot say, no, there are no incentives. Or we cannot say, what is the consensus mechanism that you're using to keep this information transparent and reliable? Okay.
I think we have time for one more question. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for a great panel. I live in Boston and I see all kinds of Latino developers and academics. And I'm wondering, Mauricio said that there's a problem with talent. Is it that they leave? Or that there's not enough talent being developed?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pass this over to whoever wants to answer those questions. Role of stablecoin, role of private companies in the developed world, any incentive structures, how to keep that going, and what about Latino talent here?
Maybe we can start responding one each, conscious of time. I can go ahead with the role of private companies. One of the difficulties that we're seeing in the blockchain sector is lack of capital. So we do these first initial investments to a group of startups where most of the times the first investor in them, and then what we do after 1 year of development, we try to connect them with additional capital sources. And that's a problem because they're still not VC ready. So they would basically need riskier capital, more like pre-seed capital, and there's not many stakeholders. So I think the private sector could especially add up to that ecosystem where they're promoting the creation of new businesses to contribute to the ecosystem that Marcos was saying.
Okay, very quickly, I would like to take those two, but I'm going to be very, very quick. Regarding the private sector, the incentives are very important, but I would say this. Today, the private institutions that are trying to make money out of business, they are selling proof of concepts that are worth 100,000 to 100,000. If they have the technological infrastructure and the standards that allow them to develop and sell $1 million worth solutions, they are more than willing that investing now, a few $100s a month to maintaining nodes and participating in consensus protocols without the incentive of cryptocurrency, for example. So that's an answer to that. Now, regarding the private sector, well, it is kind of the same response. So on one side, they want to have the technology to develop solutions that they can sell, and they also have the interest in becoming a blockchain service provider. So there's a lot of interest from the private sector.
I think the next panel is coming in, so why don't we move, if you have remaining questions, why don't we meet just outside this door and we can keep talking. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.